Hi everybody, this is the Cricket Badger podcast.
Each badger marks the track with its own scent.
His black legs are short but very powerful for digging. The name badger probably comes from the French word bêcher, meaning digger.
And a very good morning to you from the UK, everybody watching around the world, Cricket Badgers everywhere. Welcome along to another edition of the Cricket Badger podcast. And we're going to crack on today very quickly because my guest is Simon Doull, the former New Zealand international commentator extraordinaire, one of the most familiar voices in cricket at the moment. Doyle, how are you?
I'm very well. Is it Badger, Mr. Badger, Sir Badger, or James? What would you prefer?
James will be fine. James will be fine as we go through this. I have just been saying to you prior to pressing live that I announced that you were coming on yesterday. I've been talking to you about coming on for ages, haven't I? But I've had so many questions for you. We're going to have to really crack on, I think, today because I'm going to give you the 20 questions. I'm also going to bring in some of the questions from the viewers and listeners. And we'll see where we get to, shall we? The first question, though, with the 20 questions that I always ask people to get us going is, why cricket? What is it about cricket that you love that has dragged you in and has kept you?
First and foremost, it was a family thing. My dad was a very good cricketer for a bloke that only had 80% vision in one eye and about 20 in the other. He was right-eye dominant, so batted left-handed, and family, basically. Older brothers all played. Link had played first-class cricket, and Gavin was probably the most talented of the lot, the oldest one, and he just sort of squandered his talent away. So in the backyard, it was all about cricket, and it was kind of how we grew up. So I guess I don't want to say destined, but I kind of followed in their footsteps, so to speak.
It's not a bad way to spend your life, is it? It's a decent enough sport, I reckon, anyway.
Yeah, look, it's brilliant. Yeah, it's given me everything I've got now, and it's now given me a career post cricket, which has just been, I say to people every day, I don't have a job. I've got a lifestyle that pays.
Yeah, that's all right by me. If not a cricket, then if not cricket, if not a cricketer, what would you have done with your life? Where would Simon Doull have gone?
I've been a builder for many, many years. So when I left school, my dad was a builder. When I left school, I started building. So I actually built the house that he ended up living in. When my mum passed away, he moved into a retirement village, and I actually built the retirement village with the building company I was with at the time. So that would have been probably where I was at. I've never qualified, but I had the skills to sort of get by as a builder. So that probably would have been where I was at. And prior to doing the commentary gig, I spent 7 years doing breakfast radio on a rock music station. So I possibly could have even stayed there.
Okay. Spinning a few tracks and chatting away.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Every young cricketer on the way through needs a little bit of a helping hand here and there. So who was the biggest influence on your career when you were starting out?
I guess the family, to be honest with you, good and bad, critical, helpful along the way, especially my dad and Lincoln, my older brother. So they were probably the big ones, but there was a guy also, a guy called Conrad Harness, who was a little town I grew up in, Pukekohe. He basically organised all the cricket. We used to have to jump on a NZRA bus at about 6 o'clock every Saturday morning and take our Pukekohe team through to a place called Papatoe, which is about an hour and 40-minute bus ride with all of our cricket gear. And Conrad used to organise all of that and kind of got me on the road to playing. So if I go back to that sort of 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old age group, that was probably where it all started.
I'm going to take you back. You can have a day in your cricketing life to live again as something that you really enjoyed or something you achieved something. If you could choose one day to have again, which one would you take?
Wow. Gosh, Boxing Day Test match against India, New Zealand's first ever Boxing Day Test match. That'd be right up there, along with the game in Pakistan. I think it was 96 when we won the first Test match in Lahore. I think it was against Pakistan. So they're probably 2 days that I remember relatively well. I'm not a guy that remembers a lot of things about my career, to be honest. I don't know numbers. I don't know stats. I won't say they never interested me, but I didn't really look upon them and think, I need to achieve this or I need to achieve that. So there are 2 days that I do remember bits and pieces of. If you asked me who I got out, I probably couldn't tell you. But I do remember bits and pieces of them, and I remember the aftermath being quite good, and that was probably more of what I was about.
Oh, I was going to say, I've spoken to a lot of cricketers, and some are very driven. Some are, some are trying to achieve certain things. Other people, when they look back on their career, they remember the dressing room, they remember the beers afterwards, they remember the camaraderie.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. And for me, even now, what it's transpired to, and I say to people a lot that, I'm very, very fortunate to have played cricket for New Zealand. But what it's given me is it's given me people, guys, and now their wives or their kids in pretty much every country I ever went to, an opportunity to touch base when I go there, to play some golf, to catch up, to barbecue, to have a beer or lemonade with. And I think if you can end your career and have some people in every different country that you can actually call up when you go there and enjoy some post cricket times, I think it's a sign of having a decent career. For mine, not so much about what happened on the field, although it's a great thing to have achieved certain goals and achieved things on the field. I think the post cricket environment for me is as important, if not more important.
You've got a tough life, Doull, haven't you? I mean, I've been talking to you over the last few months about bringing you on here, and you've been busy in the commentary box in various different countries. You're sitting at your home now in Dubai, which is behind you through that window. It's tough, isn't it? Yeah,
really tough. Look, if people, I'll say it all the time, and people say to me, "My job's hard," and it's not. Look, the hardest thing is living out of a suitcase, and going through divorces, going through tough times in your personal life. But the bottom line is that we're very privileged. There's very few get to do what we do. I think when you look at the amount of players who have played international cricket, let's say even over the last 20, 25 years, those who have ended up in a commentary box or in a radio box or in a position where they can be on television and talk about cricket would be a very, very small percentage. So we are in a privileged position. I'd like to think I never take it for granted, but it's just amazing. I never really thought that this would be my life post cricket, but I like to think I work hard at it. I like to think, for the most part, there's a few that disagree, but I like to think I do it relatively well. But I love that debate as well. I mean, I love a good argument. I love a good debate about where the game's at, what's going on in the game at the moment, and what can make it better. And I'll always listen to a good debate rather than abuse.
Well, we might have a few of those as we go through the next few minutes. Knuckle, who's one of the friends of the Cricket Badger podcast, we'll come to one of his questions here, because you mentioned commentary. He says, a T20 World Cup or IPL with 2 games a day, the travel doesn't leave much time for research. How do you, as a commentator, make sure going into a game, the teams and players you're covering well enough? Do you prep pre-tournament? Do you get help from the broadcasters? How do you go about that?
Yeah, I do prep. I do quite a lot of prep pre-tournament, particularly on the teams that I haven't seen a lot of. I mean, you've mentioned I've been very fortunate to travel a lot around the world and do a lot of different leagues, a lot of different countries. So I like to think, for the most part, I know a lot of the players. We do rely heavily on our stats guys that's next to us, and there are some amazing stats guys, around the world, whether it be in England, the guys we use all over the world at the IPL, at the CPL, where I've just been. There's some incredible stats guys, and we do rely heavily on their input as well. And they print out a stats sheet every time, but you have to know enough about the guys you're talking about. So you do prep. I make sure I, look at through all the teams. So for the T20 World Cup, I'll do a few days at least of study. That's good time on the planes. I like to download all the information and then look at it on the planes on the way over. I don't like to do it too early out from a tournament, because you just end up forgetting some of it. Yep. And then you'll just go over it the day before a game and just sort of revisit the key aspects and certain players and pick up certain points that you might want to bring up in commentary. So there's a combination of preparation, of looking through stats and numbers, and also relying heavily on some of the magnificent stats people that we use around the world as well.
I do quite a bit of commentary myself, not just on cricket, but other sports too. And I tend to find the more prep you do, the less work you have to do on air, because you're ready for it, aren't you?
Yeah, you are. But you also, what you don't want to do is over prep and be sort of just talking about stuff that's not entirely relevant in the moment of the game. So you've got to balance that relevance of what's happening in the game with what you're talking about or what you want to talk about and bring up about a certain player as well. So, and you'll find moments in the game will trigger some thought as well around something that you've read about the player in their past, or something else that they do that might be outside of the game of cricket. So there's relevance to a lot of those sorts of things as well.
Question from Neil. Should you be taking credit for Kane's orange cap in 2018 after your quiet word with him? And also another one about commentary from Neil. Also, which commentators do you most enjoy working with? He's a big fan of you when you're working with Ian Bishop.
Yeah, look, I'll start with that one because if I'm putting together a commentary team, Ian Bishop, Nasser Hussain are right at the top of the list for me. I think Bish's due diligence, his love of the game, his work ethic is exceptional. And I think Nasser's a brilliant broadcaster. Ian Smith's right up there. He was my mentor, the guy I looked up to throughout my early part of my career, and absolutely loved Smithy.
That line in the World Cup by the barest of margins, that goes down in cricket history, doesn't it?
It does. It lives on with everybody. And those are the moments you want in your career along the way. So, look, they'd be the three at the top of my commentary roster if I was ever putting one together. And you can, I guess your listeners and viewers can throw in whoever else they want, but they'd be the three at the top of my list that I would really look at. So what was the first part of that question? Sorry, mate.
Your quiet word with Kane Williamson. Can you take credit for his orange cap?
Yeah, I think I can. Look, I love Kane to bits, and I've said for the last few years, I'm not sure we're seeing the best out of Kane as a player with the burden of captaincy in all three formats of the game. And that's one area I sort of look at now around the world. And we've got very few players who are captain in all three formats of the game for their country now. And I think New Zealand are one of the exceptions. And it's probably time that changed. So, I've said long that Kane, I told guys when Kane was probably 17, 18, that he will break all records for New Zealand cricket. He will break all batting records. You could see the talent in him at that age. And, I have no issue saying that I thought he would be the best player New Zealand's ever seen. And I think we're going to sort of see that as time goes on over the next few years.
And I dot about through my questions list here because Sridar's asked, while we're on the subject of Kane Williamson, he says, do you think it's time for Kane Williamson to cut down on his formats that he plays? We're seeing a lot of players kind of just playing white ball or red ball. And Sridar, I think, suggesting that he should play just test matches.
Yeah, look, I think Kane loves T20 cricket, and he loves the freedom of getting away from that sort of white clothing and the red ball, and just being able to unleash some of the shots because he has the ability. You go back to that the final last year, that innings he played against Australia in Dubai was just exceptional. And when you see him play T20 cricket when he's in form, he's such a great player and such a talented player. So I have no problem if he wants to play some franchise cricket around the world and play test matches and then only World Cups from a New Zealand point of view. I think he's coming to that point where he deserves it, a bit like what Trent Boult is doing. And I know it's a really touchy subject with a lot of people, but these guys have given a lot to New Zealand cricket already. They don't owe the game or owe New Zealand cricket a lot, having done what they've done. And if they want to take some time out of the international white ball games, the sort of the series that come in between World Cups, I don't have a problem with that. So yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing Kane just cut back a little bit on the international stuff and play a few franchise tournaments, have a bit of a rest here and there, and just maybe get ready for World Cups.
Back to the 20 questions. We've done your best day in cricket, the one you want to relive. What's your worst day in cricket? What's the one you want to avoid going back to?
Oh, any day where I had an injury, which was quite a few in my career. I sort of remember the day that I did my back in Zimbabwe on my first tour, discovered my first fracture, which was not pleasant. And then I ended up playing my whole career with a couple of fractures and a prolapse disc that never healed. But you just sort of, you just get through it. You either choose to play or you don't choose to play. And, it's not a great ending to this question, but the back end of my career, I was sort of living on, 200 ml Voltaren and suppositories just to get through a day. I couldn't tie my shoelaces up when I woke up in the morning, and away you go. You do what you got to do to get on the field. So any of those days where you wake up and you feel pretty average and you've got an injury are never much fun.
Reading up on you before chatting to you, injuries are always mentioned when talking about you. You just kind of refer to them there. How frustrating is that? Because I mean, looking at your stats, they're good. I mean, I know you don't look at them yourself, but they stand up to scrutiny, and that must be frustrating that you weren't able to really kind of kick on.
Yeah, and it was a frustrating period of New Zealand cricket as well. I remember we talked about it quite a few years ago about we had a fairly nice combination through that the early 90s to the sort of 2000 era of Chris Cairns, myself, and Dion Nash, which looked like a fairly good bowling attack. And you threw whether a Vittori late in the 90s in there, we had decent spinners, we had a couple of good all-rounders. You threw McMillan and Astle in there who could bowl a few overs. It looked like a really good balanced attack, but I think someone did the numbers on it. We played 3 or 4 test matches together through that whole 90s period. So you think about Chris Cairns, myself, and Dion Nash, who, Cairns had a great career. Dion Nash had a fair career. I played about the same amount of test matches I did, I think. And I had a fair career, but we just didn't play it together. We were always injured one way or another. And that was really frustrating. So could I have done it better? Yeah. Could I have been more professional? Absolutely. But, I go back to that first tour of Zimbabwe. I was building at that stage, and New Zealand cricket were going through a bit of turmoil with what they wanted to pay Mark Greatbatch, Martin Crowe, Andrew Jones and the like. And they basically demanded a whole heap of money. And then it left the rookies on the tour, which was Dion Nash, myself, and Mark Haslam. They cut the weekly allowance down to $400 a week, which was a lot less than what I was getting paid as a builder. They wanted me to go away and play for New Zealand for less money than what I was getting paid as a builder at the time. And so we kicked up a bit of a stink. So I didn't feel like in those early days I was ever treated as a professional anyway. It was just like it was a part-time job. So I didn't train as a professional. And that was probably my biggest mistake in the early days. Hence the injuries started to happen early. And once you've got them early, they just never really go away. And that was probably my biggest mistake.
When the little Simon Doull was sitting in your bedroom as a kid, was there a poster boy on the wall? Was there a cricketer that was a hero?
There was 2. Andy Roberts, great West Indian, and Sir Richard Hadley. And I always looked, I just loved Andy's aggression. And I remember listening to the radio actually when New Zealand were touring the West Indies and listening to the great Tony Cozier and the voices of the Caribbean and just listening to some of those test matches. And that was sort of when he would hit someone, I would sort of think, yeah, that's the kind of bowler I want to be. And I got to commentate and work with Andy on my first tour as a commentator in the Caribbean. It was such a highlight and a thrill, and obviously got to know Sir Richard really well through my time. He was a selector and things for New Zealand as well. So they were the 2 guys that I kind of looked up to.
I used to watch Sir Richard Hadley a little bit when he was playing for Notts, and incredible play. I'm going to let you jump into the skin. A current cricketer, you can jump into their body. You can have their life for 24 hours. You have their skills and everything they've got. Who would you pick to experience that inside? I guess is what.
Oh, goodness me. Wow. God, I mean, instantly sort of Stokes springs to mind, but I always wanted to bowl fast. So I'm thinking someone maybe like Harris Ralph, letting it go at over 150. I kind of want that feeling as well. So could I have no, I'll go with Harris Ralph. I always wanted to be quick and I was never quick. I'm going to go with Harris Ralph because I just think letting it go at 150 would feel pretty good on any given day.
Making somebody hop about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's an incredible story. And some of the Pakistan players coming through after playing tape ball cricket. I think 4 years ago or just 5 years ago, he'd not actually touched a hard ball.
And when you see the PSL, it is, I honestly, I would say this genuinely, I think it is the best fast bowling league, in the world. Every team has got at least 2 that are bowling over 145. And they have always been able to produce quick bowlers. And to me, it is just so good to watch. You look at all the teams, and as I say, they're just different guys crop up every year. And there's someone else bowling thunderbolts at 145 to 150. And it's really good to watch. That conveyor belt just sort of continues.
Right, there's a door. It says, Mr. S. Doull, the most powerful man in world cricket. You go and sit behind the desk, behind that door. What's the first thing you do to the game to make it better?
Oh, wow. I'll go with the white ball game because the first thing I do is I change the ball at night if there's any dew every second over. And I make sure that the toss and the dew does not influence the game anywhere near as much as it does nowadays, because I just don't agree with it. I don't think it should. And there's enough money in the game to say to teams, here's 3 boxes of white cricket balls, use them in training for today and then give them back to us, because we need these balls for game situations. I hate, and I know hate's a strong word, but I dislike the fact that the toss dictates the outcome of games so often because of a wet ball. And I would just rather see the umpires take control, take charge, and throw out another ball every 2 overs and say, here you go, guys, let's get on with the game.
Yeah, I like that answer. That's a good one. Right. You're going to start your career again, but you're able to talk to yourself. What would you say to the 10 or 12-year-old Simon Doull to make yourself a better cricketer now?
Train a little smarter, train a little harder, not learn, because I could bat. I mean, at junior cricket, at club cricket, I was always batting 4, 5. I could bat, but I let that go. So stick with the batting, continue the bowling, and train smarter, and not necessarily harder, just train smarter. And I think you'll be okay.
Looking at your stats, there's a century there, isn't there? First class century, just one of them.
Yep.
How much does that mean to you? Because I've spoken to bowlers before, and often the batting stats mean as much as the bowling stats.
Yeah, absolutely. It was fantastic, actually. There's there's probably 3 innings in my batting career that stand out for me, and 2 of them are weirdly sort of low scores, but that's the other one, the 100 against Canterbury at Lancaster Park, which it was known back then, not Jade Stadium. And it was my one and only first class 100. I think Grant Bradburn was actually at the other end when I passed the 3 figures, who's a good mate of mine, so that was nice. There was a 1 not out at the Bell Reeve Oval against Australia to save a test match, to eke out a draw. I think Shane O'Connor was at the other end, and he took Shane Warne. That
was your Jack Leach moment, was it?
That was it. Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
Shane O'Connor was at the other end. He took Shane Warne, and I think I took Rifle and whoever the seamer was at the other end for about 9 or 10 overs at the end of the test match to save that, which was a great one. And then there's a guy that the English will know really well called Matthew Maynard, who had a lot of time for Matty Maynard. He came and played in New Zealand for Northern Districts with us, and we were in a whole heap of trouble for Northern Districts against Auckland in a game. I think we were 8 for 80, maybe something along those lines, and Matty got 190, I think, while I was at the other end getting 20 or 19 or 20. And I just sort of sat there and watched him maneuver the strike around. It was great. A funny incident in that game that Deepak Patel got 10 wickets in the match and a double 100 and didn't get player of the match.
Wow.
Yeah.
You'd feel a bit aggrieved, wouldn't you, if you
I think you would. I think he still holds a grudge.
They say, Doyle, that all sports stars want to be rock stars and vice versa. Rock stars tend to want to be able to be footballers or cricketers. If you could be famous doing something else, what would you like to do? Would it be a lead guitarist? Would you be an actor? How would you like to see yourself?
I'd be a pro golfer.
That's a good answer.
Yeah, I'd be a pro. Look, I love the music side of things, and as I say, I did 7 years on the rock music breakfast show in New Zealand, which I loved. I'm sort of into my rock music and music in general. But yeah, look, I'd be a pro golfer any day of the week.
Different dynamic though, isn't it? When you kind of from a team sport to being on your own there in the middle of the fairway.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a funny thing about cricket, though, isn't it? You rely on the team, but in so many ways, it's mano on mano. It's an individual sport. It's woman on woman. It is that once you've got the ball in the hand, you rely on your teammates to take the catches, but it is just you against the batter, and it's sort of it's a team sport played individually in some ways. And I think some of the most, dare I say it, some of the most selfish people in the world have been the best players in the world, strangely enough, because it is a very individual sport played in a team at times.
But if you're selfish and you try and get the best out of yourself, you're contributing to the team at the same time, aren't
That's
you?
it.
So it
Yeah,
kind of
that's
works
it.
both ways.
And I think, when I look at New Zealand cricket, I mean, Sir Richard was very much like that. Martin Crowe was very much like that, and New Zealand cricket benefited massively from that. I mean, there was drive, there was an air of selfishness, but there was also, an enormous amount of skill that went with it.
If you could meet anybody, living or dead, that you've not met before, who would you like to meet? It's that kind of that dinner party question. Who would you have round for a beer?
Yeah, gosh. Wow. I want to say maybe Eddie Vedder, Pearl Jam.
Okay.
Yeah, I just look. I love Pearl Jam. I love Vedder. I love that that era of music. And I think a night out with him would be pretty cool.
They're going to make Doull the movie. Who plays you?
Oh, wow. Who plays Doull the movie? Ben Affleck.
Okay.
Yeah,
is that because you admire him as an actor, or because he looks like you?
Maybe. No, I don't think he looks like me too much. I like him. I like what he and Matt Damon do. I like their sort of directors stuff as well a little bit now. So yeah, I'll go with Ben Affleck.
Right, I got a question here from Bobson Dugnet, and this is it made me laugh when I saw this. I don't know if you've seen the questions coming in on the Twitter feed or not, but Bobson basically, I'm going to put up a picture on the screen, and he said, as well as an illustrious cricket and commentary career, did he also play Toadfish Rebecca in Neighbours?
Brilliant. Well, I don't know whether I want to say it's better than what I normally get, but I've had I don't know whether you can Google a picture and put it up this quickly, but I've had Bashar al-Assad more often than I've had anyone else. So, maybe that's better.
I'm not technically good enough to do that, I'm afraid.
No,
but,
exactly.
I did like that, because there is a little bit of a similarity there between the kind of hairstyles and a bit of the facial hair and stuff.
Yeah, I think the eyes sort of are quite similar there. So I like it. Well done, Bobson.
So that's that one. So the movie about your life, we've ticked that one off. What's the last time, Simon Doull, that you can remember feeling really nervous? Do you get nervous? Are you a nervy kind of character, or do you feed off those nerves, or are you very chilled?
Yeah, no, I do. I do get nervous, and I like the fact that I still get nervous, because if I don't think you maybe don't care enough about it, or you don't feel like you are really in the moment if you're not getting slightly nervous. So the last time, I mean, I do the IPL presentation pretty much every year. I did that last year, which is leading up to it. It's quite a nervy time. You know how many people you're going out to, calling the final, calling the moments, calling that World Cup the World Test Championship final. They were sort of nervy moments, trying to find the right words to say. So yeah, I do get nervous, and I enjoy the fact that I get a little bit nervous. I'm not I'm still confident about what I'm doing, but there are those moments.
I don't want to come across as somebody that's trying to blow smoke up your ear end, but as somebody that does a bit of commentary as well, I like to think that I can see if somebody's doing a good job or not. And I always listen to you and think, yeah, you're getting this right. And I think the moment I actually think that stands out for me with you, the IPL that was played behind closed doors through COVID, and you signed off at the end of that, and I thought you did that really well. Was that something you'd prepared for?
Yeah, I always so with our producer, a guy called Nick Etherton is usually our producer for the IPL finals and playoffs, and I know the day before that I'm doing the last stint, and I always like to have words written down and have things prepared for those sorts of times. And that was a really interesting one, because, like you say, we miss the fans massively, and I think the broadcast did a great job of trying to sort of bring a little bit of atmosphere to the game, but it's never quite the same. And so I always have things prepared for those sorts of moments. And I think if you don't, you're probably not doing it justice, and you're not doing your job well enough if you don't have some notes prepared. You don't read it, verbatim. You don't look at it and read it right off the script, but you must have some bullet points there, I think, that lead to the moment.
Going off on a tangent a little bit, but I thought with that IPL behind closed doors, after a while, Because I mean, I pretty much watched every single match of that because I was in
Everyone
COVID
was the
as well.
same.
And but I thought that they had the perimeter, didn't they, which was kind of like a digital screen.
Yes.
And after, I mean, you obviously didn't get the crowd shots, which you usually get in an IPL, but because it was kind of enclosed with that screen, it was quite effective in making you actually forget there was nobody there.
Yeah. So what they did was they had that. It was like a 12-foot LED, and it just went high enough that the cameras, when they panned on players, the LED was still above the head, and it was all about the fans around the world and the fans that had been there. So they had sort of their pictures and other things on those LEDs. So that they did that very well, I thought, to try and make it look like it wasn't played in an empty stadium. Everybody knew it was anyway, but it just gave a little bit of a visual effect in the background. I think they did that very well. Otherwise, if we didn't have that in Dubai, we wouldn't have had an IPL that year. And I know people will sit back and say, well, you shouldn't have had it. There was a pandemic going on globally, blah, blah, blah. But it brought a lot of joy to a lot of people, that were stuck at home and were sitting and just waiting for that 6 p.m. time slot to make sure that they had their daily fix.
I did an IPL daily podcast because I had nothing else to do myself. And we had fans from India, had fans from all over the world that were watching the IPL. And the messages that came in, it was the thing that was keeping people going because they were getting up. There was nothing to do. They were waiting till that time when the first match of the day was going to kick off, sit down, watch the cricket.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there was so many people around the world felt that way. And, look, there was obviously a lot of stuff going on around the world and we could read the news. We could see what was going on. But it was one of those situations where you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. And I think there was a lot of people that were very grateful to be able to have that little fix, on their given day.
Top item on your bucket list, things to do before you die. What do you want to chalk off before that day comes? Hopefully that day's not for a while yet.
Hopefully not. Look, I'd love to play golf at Augusta. Augusta National, where they play the Masters. I'm a golf nut. First thing I did the day after I got back here after the CPL was go and have a round of golf in Dubai. And if I could ever play Augusta, I think that would be, I'd have clocked life.
A tricky downhill putt on the Augusta greens. That's a scary prospect, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Incredible spectacle that when that's being played as well. On a scale of 1 to 10, I don't know if you can remember Happy Days, the Fonz. 10 is the Fonz, the height of cool. 1 is not cool. Where would you be on that spectrum? How cool are you?
Oh dear, you're asking the right person. I'm going to give myself a good mark here. I'm going to say 8.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's one of the highest scores anybody's ever given themselves on that question.
Well, I like to think I'm doing all right with that side of things. So yeah, I'm happy with that.
Okay. Next question. If you had access to a time machine, you can go anywhere. You can go forwards in time. You can go backwards in time. You can go to a cricket match. You can go historically. You can go back to, 1200, 1066, whatever you want to do. Where would you take that time machine?
Oh my goodness, where would I take that time machine? Wow, I think I'd probably go forwards. Maybe I'm going to say 20, 30 years, and just make sure both my boys are doing okay.
Yeah.
And everything's sort of healthy and cool in their lives.
Okay, yeah, that's nice.
Yeah.
Would you have a look at a cricket match while you were there to see what it was like?
Not unless one of them was playing in an over 50s game. No. Look, I don't know actually. Cricket in the future. Yeah, I don't want to worry about what that might look like.
You could say with some authority though, next time you're on commentary, I reckon in 30 years' time it's going to be.
Well, that's a good point. Actually, come back and then I would know everything. Yeah, it's a good point. I don't know. Maybe I would.
I'm going to get to some of the questions then now from the viewers stroke listeners, because obviously we're going out on video, but people will be able to listen to this later as well on the more traditional podcast format. Biased Cricketing Opinions says, we hear a lot of pitches in New Zealand's domestic cricket are changing. Can you talk a bit more about how much that has an impact on things and New Zealand's performances?
Yeah, look, I think there was a conscious effort quite a number of years ago now, and I'm going back maybe 8, 9, 10 years ago, to making our surfaces or the surfaces in New Zealand a lot better. Harder work for bowlers, but producing runs, and I think that's been the key. With you've got to allow guys to score hundreds and big hundreds, and I think that's been one of the things that has improved New Zealand's batting in particular. And it also improves your bowling. It makes the bowlers have to work hard. We spent a lot of years through, probably post the Sir Richard Hadley era, producing a lot of medium paces.
Yep.
Guys that did well on greenish type wickets that seemed around a little bit and weren't really hard and fast. And so what it's allowed us to do is produce some skillful bowlers. I mean, we don't produce out and out quick bowlers. You think of Lockie Ferguson, Adam Milne, who are sort of, been over the 140s regularly in the last 6-7 years. But outside of that, you're still talking swing bowlers, guys with skills, the Bolts, the Southies, the Henrys, Kyle Jamieson, those sorts of blokes. So I think the conscious effort was just to make the surfaces better for cricket. We do leave a lot of grass on them on day 1, day 2, but that really puts the opposition off more than it ever puts our players off. And that's one of the keys. Guys look at those green pitches and think, oh my God, it's going to seam all over the place. But they don't. They don't do an enormous amount. And if they do, New Zealand or the associations want it to do it for 2 days. So if we bowl you out or you bowl us out, we've got the chance to do that on day 2. And then it gets fairly flat on day 3, 4, and 5. So there was a conscious effort to make them better. And I think New Zealand have benefited massively from that on that stage. Our biggest issue is, though, we don't play spin very well, and we don't have any pitches in New Zealand that turn. And if we do produce one that turns, where I used to play at Northern Districts in Hamilton, they've got one side of the block that they can produce a spinning wicket. As soon as the ball turns, everybody in New Zealand starts to complain. All the coaches think, oh, Northern Districts have doctored the pitch to suit their spin bowling attack. But that's probably the one issue I see with New Zealand. We just don't play spin very well, which therefore means we don't produce a lot of spinners. Having said that, we saw what Ajaz could do in Mumbai when he got an opportunity.
New Zealand's story is terrific, isn't it? Because it's a relatively small country compared to even England's, but India, 1.4 billion people, New Zealand, what, 6 million people?
Yeah, probably between 5 and 6 now.
Yeah, the ability to compete and go toe to toe with a country that's so big, so larger than yourselves. That's quite some feat, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I think the game now, you just have to try and dominate at home. And if you make your home conditions yours and try and dominate at home, you steal the odd one away. And I think that's almost like the way that most sides are going now. And that's why I have no issue. And I know people look at things. I mean, England and New Zealand produce sort of greenish pitches day 1 for the most part. I've got no problem with the ball turning on day 1. Like Indian batters do not play spin anywhere near as well as they used to play spin. Good quality spin, I don't think. So you've got a chance. If you pick good spinners, you've got a chance in India. It's just that their spinners are probably slightly better in those conditions. But I don't have an issue. If the ball seams on day 1 or if it spins on day 1, I've got no problem. So, and I don't find any difference in that. So I see people complaining about India doing pitches for themselves or Sri Lanka doing the same. It's like, we do the same thing in New Zealand. England did it for years. Trying to win a test match with green seaming pitches. I don't have a problem with it.
I mean, you talk about the home and away thing there. I mean, England fans getting excited after the Bazball stuff going on this summer. But I mean, if you actually go back prior to COVID, England have always been strong at home and rubbish away from home. Lose to Australia, lose to India. It's only really a I'm not getting carried away just yet with this England side because they've got Pakistan to face yet, and that could be a completely different challenge.
Yeah, look, it will be, and I mean, I don't like the term. I talked to Brendan about the term. It's not something he brought up. It's I think it was a journalist that wrote something about it, but it's a positive brand of cricket. It's the way Ben is, it's the way Brendan is, and it's what they wanted to introduce. And it's slightly different, but it's not reckless. It's not gung ho. And I think I don't know. The term to me is a nothing term that there's a journalist in England at the moment that's sitting back going, "Oh, I made this word up," and everybody's using it, and he's laughing at everybody else. So look, they're a good side. They've got some flaws as well. I think they've got some work to do in certain areas as well, and they won't always win playing that style of cricket. But the one thing that Brendan did with New Zealand, and along with Mike Hesson after the 2012 South Africa debacle, they gave New Zealand an identity. And that's all it was. It wasn't about, it wasn't necessarily about a brand of cricket. It was, how do we want to be as a nation playing the game? And we want an identity. We don't want to be like England. We can't play like Australia. Let's just be New Zealand and let's embrace it. And we want to leave this game in a better state than when we came in. And that's kind of all it was. And they embraced a New Zealand way of playing, a New Zealand style of playing, which wasn't an in-your-face aggressive style, but it was quite hard. And that's what New Zealand did really well. And I think that's what he's trying to do with England. And so far it's been relatively successful, but it's a fairly small sample size.
It seems to me, Doull, that it's not, as you say, it's not reckless. It's about kind of taking, if you got two choices, you take the more positive option. That could be to defend more positively. And I've seen a lot of people suggesting that kind of the next cab off the rank has to be somebody, they're almost kind of picking people out of T20 cricket to play Test cricket for England because they're going to be the positive option. But you can have an Alex Lees. If he's playing well and he's playing positively defensively and he's actually contributing to the side, he still fits into the Brendan McCullum sort of style.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I don't think anybody doesn't fit in. And I the same as you, I've sort of read people going, "Oh, well, Liam Livingstone's got a bit." Like, no, please, just let your guys. Sam, first class cricket, one of the leading run scorers, opening batter. His name will come to me from England. But there's enough guys in
Sam
English
Robson.
county cricket. Sam Robson, English county cricket that are scoring runs at that level. And they're exciting, they're talented players. So they will get the opportunities. It's not just about crash, bang, wallop. And that's not how he will look at it. And the more that Brendan watches domestic cricket and first-class cricket, the more that the scouts sort of, he gets to know players. All they want, and all he wants, and I don't know this because of, I just know Brendan, he just wants a very positive environment. He wants a very positive dressing room that if there is a chance, we're going to take it. And you can handle a loss. We'll go back to that New Zealand game where they didn't try and chase 260 odd at Lords.
Yeah.
What we're going back 2 years ago. And that's not how he would look at it. And if England had tried to chase it and lost, I don't think there would have been a person in that ground that would have said, "Oh, they should never have gone for it."
No.
They would have enjoyed the opportunity to chase a win. And the fact that it didn't happen, I think, disgruntled a lot of people.
One of the young viewers of the Cricket Badger podcast, Jacob, has sent you a question here. He says, who do you think will win the T20 World Cup? And who are New Zealand's upcoming talents, some youngsters to look out for?
My issue, Jacob, is that I don't spend any time in New Zealand anymore. I don't do New Zealand domestic cricket or indeed our home summers. I haven't been there for 3 years now. So my issue around that is that I don't see a lot of New Zealand cricket, sadly, anymore with Sky losing the contract, and I sort of chose not to go across the road. So as far as young talent is concerned, I'm a little bit sort of behind the eight ball with who is coming through. So unfortunately, that one's a tough one for me to answer. I've recently done an ICC, I don't know, something like this, I guess you'd call it a podcast, a video with Ravi Shastri, Sean Pollock, and Carlos Brathwaite, where we did a whole lead up to the tournament, to the T20 World Cup, and we were asked who our winners were. And I'll tell you who I picked because it's a little bit controversial off the wall, but I picked South Africa to win the T20 World Cup. And I just feel that their bowling attack suits Australian conditions. I have an issue around their skipper playing. If they can find a way to leave him out of the team, I think they're an even better side. But I understand why he's there, and I still think they've got the batting power and the batting depth to win a World Cup in Australia, and maybe it's their time.
It's an exciting tournament though, because you can probably make a case for maybe 7 or 8 sides to have a bit of a crack at the trophy. Yeah,
you can. Look, and the way sides are playing, I think. I mean, that recent series, England-Pakistan, is just a cracking series to watch. Both sides going hammer and tong, looking to get a lot of runs on the board has been fantastic. Australia are going to be very difficult to beat back at home. India are always going to be strong. If Bumrah's not there, I think their side is depleted and weakened. You just lose those unbelievable overs at the death, which he's capable of, as well as that one up front. So that makes them a little less of a favoured side for my liking. But, you throw a blanket over South Africa, Australia, Pakistan, India. I just think that any one of those sides, England, any one of those sides could win it.
Next question is from the Wyke Tyke. I'm actually sitting in Bradford talking to you right now. And he says, which club cricketers in the Bradford League took you for a few? I don't know if that means runs or drinks.
Look, I'll always say the same answer to this sort of question. There was a guy in the Bradford League who I thought should have played a heck of a lot of first-class cricket called Richie Robinson. Left-handed, just probably one of the most stylish players, one of the best players I'd seen in league cricket in my time. There was plenty of players around, Chris Pickles and guys that played a lot of first-class cricket. Grayson, the guy I played with at St Lawrence, Chris Scott, who was incredibly talented. But Richie Robinson was just an exceptional player, and I thought he should have played a heck of a lot of first-class cricket. I'm not sure why, don't know the reasons for it, but he was exceptional.
Daniel Kelly says, thanks to Simon for his brilliant broadcasting this summer. Wondered if he likes the way in England we use the pod to be more involved in the T20 experience. And does he see that translating to the IPL? Are you coming back to England next summer to work again?
Well, I hope Brian's watching. Brian Henderson, head of Sky. Under the influence, he offered me at least 3 years, maybe more. So yeah, look, hopefully I will be back. Look, the offer's sort of on the table to come back for the next 3 summers at least, and do the blast and the 100 and anything else in between that sort of they need me for. So that is my plan. I absolutely love it. I really enjoyed the blast this year. I thought it was a cracking competition. I thoroughly enjoyed calling finals day. Calling the mascot race was something a little bit different, and even the chaos at the end, where I didn't know what to say or what to do, and there was so much going on. But I had a cracking time, and then obviously leading through the international stuff and into the 100 as well, which I think has been magnificent for the women's side of the game in particular. So, hopefully coming back and looking forward to it.
In terms of the pod element of that, when you kind of like pitch side and very close to the action, aren't you there? That's kind of different to how the IPL do it. Do you think that could translate?
I like it. I absolutely love it. And the fact that we can actually yell out the front of the caravan window or the pod window and sort of talk to players every now and then. And, it's a great thing. The only thing I will say is when you are up higher, you kind of get a better view of the whole ground and things. So you do tend to commentate a bit more off the television. But you get the atmosphere on the ground. The pod in an IPL situation might be a little bit difficult with the sound. That would be the only thing I'd be a little bit more worried about. The sound and the noise in the stadium in India is just, it's just next level. And I wonder whether that would work as much in that situation. So might be difficult, but I'd love to give it a go.
Okay. Now, checking with you at the moment. Now, are you okay for time? Because I've still got quite a few questions.
Absolutely. No, all good. Okay, all good. I've got nothing else to
do. Graham Roberts, he says, do you ever get bored of T20? And I'll just before you answered that, I've kind of been quite vocal against the 100. I want to see a balance of cricket. I want to see red ball given priority in the calendar as well as the white ball. I describe it that my dream of a summer is like a stick of rock, like a red and white swirly pattern going through the season. Sometimes T20 competitions can kind of go on a little bit. The IPL has been extended. The Big Bash has been extended to kind of mirror the IPL. I think in some instances, the IPL is always going to be top dog because it's got India, it's got 1.4 billion. But some of the other tournaments that have tried to mimic it seem to drag on a tad.
Yeah, look, I think they've ruined the Big Bash. I think the Big Bash was a very good tournament at the start, and I think they've ruined it. And you even talk to players, and players are reluctant to go back because the money hasn't increased, but the length of time they have to be there has increased a lot. So that's one tournament that I think is just hasn't quite got it right. I've just been down the CPL. It's a 4.5 to 5 week tournament, which I think is a perfect length for that type of tournament. We've got the UAE and the South African ones kicking off next year, which I think are only a month. Which I think is the perfect time. The IPL is, as long as the tournament is growing and the broadcast deals and the quality of cricket is not diminished, which I don't think it has. I think you saw the new teams come into the fore a little bit last year in the IPL. I don't think the quality of cricket has diminished. So I think they can get away with it, being a little bit longer. But yes, some of the other tournaments around the world, I think that 4 week block is a really good time. But I think as soon as you start getting into 5, 6, 7 weeks, it does drag on a little bit too long for mine. I'll come back to your 100 point because I just because I love the blast and I love the 100. And one thing I found in England this summer, which is a little bit frustrating, is that because I enjoyed the 100, people thought I didn't like county cricket. I mean, I love cricket. I love cricket full stop. I love test match cricket. I love county cricket. I love 50 over white ball. I love the game and I love talking about the game. And I don't know the structure in and around what's going to happen with English cricket. But I think just because you enjoy the 100, it doesn't mean you hate red ball cricket or county cricket as well. And there's some good debates. And as I said to you, I think there's plenty of good debates to be had. I don't think the 100 is the finished product by any stretch of the imagination. I don't think it's been great for the men's competition this year. It needs some better overseas quality players. It needed better games. I think, the women's comp, I think has been really good, although, again, we could do with some better games, but I think the quality of international player in the women's competition was better. I think it's only going to improve English women's cricket across the board. So there's some good and bad things about it. But the one thing I will say is I think from a broadcast point of view, it's here to stay. From an ECB point of view, it's here to stay. So how do we not necessarily get everybody on board, but how do we just enjoy all formats across the summer? And the other thing about it, I've never been told once what to say and what I can and can't say. Not once. Even in India, they don't tell me. I've been told off once at the IPL for saying something that I felt passionate about, and maybe I shouldn't have said in hindsight, but I've never been told by anyone, any other broadcaster, what I have to say or what I should and shouldn't say. And I like to think I just talk about the game, and hopefully that sort of comes across. But I don't dislike any format of the game, or I don't want to see any format of the game disappear either, to be honest.
There's a kind of culture in England at the moment, Doull. I don't know if you picked up on it, where there's very binary opinions on everything. There's no grey area in the middle. It's kind of politics, particularly at the moment with Brexit and various other things. But I totally agree with you. I would never disregard any 100 fans' right to talk about cricket. A lot of people say, well, it's not cricket, so we don't don't converse with those people. I think my main frustration here is that, as I say, I like to kind of the red and white swirly kind of stick of rock going through the season, is that the 100 takes up August. It takes up the probably weather-wise, school holidays, all the rest of it. It takes up the biggest summer month in the cricket landscape in England. If I want to take my son to watch a test match, there's going to be no test matches in that month over the next. If I want to take my son to watch a county championship match, there's going to be no red ball cricket in August, basically, other than these festivals that they're kind of trying to shoehorn in to kind of keep people like me happy. And I would actually probably a lot of my heckles rather, and belligerence against the 100 would diminish a lot if the 100 wasn't kind of removed from the Strauss review, if it was actually malleable and able to be moved around a little bit, so that the other parts of cricket could be respected too.
Yeah, and I think that's a very fair point, and it's about finding that balance, isn't it? And it's not about keeping everybody happy. It's actually what's best for English cricket, and what's best for the county game and those who have supported that game for many, many years. And I mean, the other, county's sort of job, I guess, and I look at it from a New Zealand point of view, we have 6 associations, and of those 6 associations, probably 4 of them feel that their role is to produce New Zealand cricketers, produce players for New Zealand. 2 of them probably think their role is, I don't really care about New Zealand cricket. I just want to win a championship and win a title. And it's frustrating for me, because I think when I look at the English situation, the role of a county is to nurture talent and to produce England talent, because that should be the goal of every county, really. Because if the English game is strong, then the filters down, doesn't it? And everybody underneath gets stronger and continues to sort of, I guess, prosper from the game. But it's finding that balance, and in whether you play red ball cricket at the same time, whether another tournament, another sort of structured game can be played around that time in August, in the best months. Do you want to compete with football? I think not. The start of the Premier League, that was, I think, part of the reason as well. They don't want to be starting the 100 in the same time as the Premier League, because that just takes away half of your audience.
Yeah.
They wanted it at school holiday time. I don't know the answers to it. It's a tough one, because you talk about your son. Does he want to go to a 100 game? Would he enjoy it, or would he rather watch a 4-day game, a county game?
I think I've talked to people who say, "Well, I've taken my kid along to." I mean, you mentioned the women's game. I think that's the major plus from the 100. But I've taken my kid to a 100 match and they loved it. Well, there's no reason not to, because you've got all the bells and whistles, the fireworks, all the lights, the loud music, and everything like that. The question I'd ask those people is, well, have you tried them at the blast? And if you put those bells and whistles into the blast and actually invested a little bit more into the blast and gave all the kind of little, little gizmos into that, that to me would be just as good an experience to take a kid to. Show all parts of cricket a lot of love. I'm very conscious, actually, with all of these questions coming in. We could actually probably do a podcast on each of these questions in isolation. So we probably need to crack on a little bit. The next question relates to Merv Donalds. He's basically saying, in your playing days, if the opposition were 9 down and needed 19 to win, but you were getting pummeled, would you resort to run it? Well, I'm going to call this running out the non-striker who is backing up too far.
No, it's not something that I would do. I have no issue with it. I have absolutely zero issue with it. I think it's part of the game. And to me, if I am that far over the line with my front foot, it's called a no ball. So why should the batter get any advantage when they're running between the wickets? So I don't have any issue with anybody doing it, and I'll never chastise anyone doing it. Personally, I don't feel I ever would have.
Okay. Lily, excuse me, Lily, thank you for your question. We've probably just covered that, actually, when what we just talked about with T20, asking about the Andrew Strauss review, and that could be a three-part podcast.
It's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah. So thank you for your question, Lily. Aaron says, I'd like to know if you're concerned by what appears to be the dearth of young talent being blooded to an already aging New Zealand team outside of Allen and Sears. What will New Zealand cricket look like beyond the 2023 ODI World Cup? I mean, you've mentioned that you haven't kind of maybe been paying domestic cricket in New Zealand enough attention, but is that a valid point Aaron's making, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. No, I think most teams go through a cycle, and when you've got a small talent pool, I think that's one of the issues that New Zealand will have. They'll go through those highs and lows over probably 10 to 12-year periods, because they've got an enormous amount of talent in the last 2, 3, 4 years. But like you say, your Bolts, Williamsons, Southies, Lathams, Nichols, all these guys are over 30. And so there is that situation where I think New Zealand, because they're not really blooding too many young players, they will have a time in the next 2 to 3 years, I think, where that team will have a lot of new players coming into it and probably won't be at their peak again. But you kind of, with a small talent pool, you will have more of that than with a big talent pool to choose from.
A nod to Chris DS as well, because he's basically asking a very similar question. Love your work, James and Doull. Given the limited resources to New Zealand cricket, how do you see the Black Caps faring beyond the current cycle, which is very similar to Aaron's question? But thank you for your question, Chris. Sridhar, back to him. His final question. Simon's take on the growing number of T20 leagues around the globe. You mentioned the new ones that are coming in. When is too much? When are we got too many leagues around the world? A lot of people in England are concerned about the IPL kind of encroaching into the English season, taking the players away. Obviously, the money is a big factor in that as well. When are we going to get to the stage where basically it's overkill and people turn off? Because when the T20 was brought in, Dolly, it was about a quick fix. It was razzmatazz. It was go along and get you 3 or 4 weeks. You see the start of a tournament. You see the final. The narrative's easy to follow. Whereas at the moment, I think the danger is we're going to see the same people in different coloured clothing against a different backdrop, and it all blends into each other a little bit.
Yeah, it is a little bit. And I think with what you see with some of the Indian franchises now, and I think this is where the 100 is heading. I don't know. I haven't talked to people about it, but I think this is where the 100 is heading. It will eventually be sold. It'll eventually be franchised. And you will find that the Kolkata franchise will probably own a team, and Mumbai will probably own a team, and Chennai or Rajasthan. I think it will happen down the track, because I think that's the model that they've been looking at.
Yeah.
So I look at an Andre Russell, for want of another name right now. Now, he will probably next year, I would say Andre Russell will be on $6 or $7 million for Kolkata, and he will play for all 5 of their franchises around the world. He won't play any other cricket. And that'll be it for Andre Russell. The problem for me becomes, when does Devalt Brevis decide that that's for him? When does Tristan Stubbs decide that he's a Mumbai man and he's going to get 5 or 6 million US and only play those 5 tournaments and not play international cricket and be done with it? That becomes that's the space I'm watching in the next 2, 3, 4 years. Who's the first of the young players to sign up as a franchise marquee player, and that's all he wants to do? So that's going to be something I'll be looking at. The length of tournaments is a concern. For a long time, I've said I don't think there should be any international T20 cricket at all bilaterally, apart from a T20 World Cup.
Yeah,
I think players should play test matches, 50-over cricket. And if you want to watch T20 cricket as a pundit, as a fan, you've got to go along to your local team and watch. So you've got to watch Blast. You've got to watch domestic cricket. And that drives fans back to domestic T20 games. And it also means that a T20 World Cup means something. And it really means something. But your players have basically plied their trade all around the world in domestic T20 competitions. And you pick them from that. A la the sort of football model, I suppose, is kind of where I would like to see it. The problem with that is that for a lot of boards, the T20 game is their cash cow, the international cash cow, because they sell out stadiums. So they won't agree to it. They won't want it. But that's kind of where I would like to see it.
That's the problem with cricket. It's like the 18 counties. They all want something slightly different with this Strauss review. And yeah, broadcasters want something slightly different. Fans want something slightly different. You never can please everybody when it comes to making decisions in cricket. We're going to get back to the 20 questions. I think I've got 4 left. We're on to question number 17. So we're getting there, Simon. Thank you very much for being on today.
All good.
If you could live anywhere in the world, where would it be? Well, you've got Dubai behind you. I guess that's part of the answer, isn't it?
This is it. Yeah, this is it for me. Look, it's one flight for the most part to wherever I want to go. The Caribbean was a little more difficult, but I got a direct to Sydney. We got a direct to New Zealand. My work is sort of, anywhere around Asia at the moment. One flight to Europe. Some of the best golf courses in the world, and it's just it's a nice place to live. So for me at the moment, this is it. I may change my mind down the line, but. Yeah, I don't see that changing for quite some time.
Is it? How much of your work is kind of in the diary, or how much of it is Simon Doull got suitcase, will travel, will work anywhere with 5 minutes notice?
I can tell you. So obviously, I'm back here for 8 days. I fly down to Australia next week for the T20 World Cup. Go straight from there to New Zealand to work for Amazon Prime for the New Zealand India series. Finish there on the 1st of December. I've taken December off, and on about the 25th or 26th, so Christmas Day or the day after, I fly to Pakistan, do the New Zealand Pakistan series, come straight back and do the new UAE T20 League, so the International T20 League, go back for the PSL, go straight to the IPL, straight to England, and then back down to the Caribbean. So I'm fully booked through to the end of September next year.
So if a broadcaster hires you to do the UAE League, they don't have to pay you for a hotel then, I guess?
Exactly. They love it. That's the one bonus for them.
If you could change one thing about yourself, Simon Doull, the human being, what would it be?
Oh, man. I'd give myself a new back.
You and me
That's
both.
It. Yeah, I'd give myself a new back, basically. I would, from about chest to hip, I would replace every bit, and hopefully then I'll be able to sort of be a little bit more comfortable.
What will Simon Doull be doing in 10 years' time? Will it be the same stuff as you're doing now? You're quite happy to continue over the next decade and just carry on doing what you're doing?
I hope so. Look, whether it's less, whether it's the same, I don't know. But I like to think I'm kind of in the prime of my commentary career at the moment, and getting plenty of work and a lot of offers to do different things. I'd like to think I can still do it in 10 years' time at the age of 63. If I can't, then I'll have enjoyed every bit of being able to do what I'm doing now. So, hopefully the same thing.
I mean, obviously you're in cricket. You mentioned doing the kind of the rock station breakfast show kind of stuff as well. Have you had any offers outside of cricket to do other stuff too? Have you and does that appeal to you to maybe to branch into maybe other sports or other kind of
Yeah,
genres?
I've done some motor racing. When I was back in New Zealand, I did a bit of motorsport. A little. I'd love to do some golf. I really would love to talk a bit more and do some golf. That's obviously my real passion. And I've done a little bit of work with the horse racing industry. I've done a breeding show and things. I've got racehorses. It's
Okay.
been a real passion of mine for a number of years. So I've got about got 11 or 12 racehorses at the moment, mostly down under, or all of them down under, actually, Australia and New Zealand. And yes, that's an area that I have been involved in, and I'd certainly see myself doing a bit of that along the way in the next few years as well.
We've reached question number 20. And
Cool.
the question number 20 is always one that confuses everybody. It's probably the way I ask it. So concentrate, if you don't mind. I've asked you loads of questions today. And we've got some great answers off you. And thank you, everybody out there, for sending your questions in too, because some good questions coming in from the listeners and viewers. If you'd been in my square on our screen and you'd been interviewing yourself, is there something you'd have asked yourself to get a great and exclusive answer that maybe we've not covered?
Ooh, is there something I'd have asked myself? How tough is it to be an international cricketer and dare I say it, commentator in the modern game, with all of the games, all of the cricket, and all the sort of tournaments going on?
And your answer to that?
It's incredibly tough, and I think you need a really strong family or support network around you nowadays. And if you don't have that, I think you find it really difficult. It can be quite a lonely place at times, whether you're in form, out of form, looking for that next run, that next wicket. I think as a player, the life on the road, the life living out of a suitcase, everything that's happened in the last 3, 4, 5 years, the talk about mental health and awareness is so much more out there. As blokes, we are useless at that sort of thing. We don't talk enough about it. We don't open up enough about the struggles, about the times that it is tough, the times you're sitting in your hotel room wondering what will be tomorrow or what will be next week, or worrying about your family at home, your friends. I don't think you contact people enough. I don't think you ask your friends if they're okay, or your partner if they're okay enough. So that would be something that I think I'm more conscious of now, and something I think when you look at what we do or what players do, just remember that it might look all rosy, it might look all sort of tea and biscuits, but sometimes they're going through the same struggles as you are at home, and it's not easy. And just read your tweet twice, read your message twice before you send it or before you post it.
We've talked about mental health quite a lot on this podcast. I had my struggles probably a decade or so ago, and can manage it now. But you're right. The only way to kind of solve any issues you have inside your head is to talk to somebody else and get it out there and try and explore it. I'm a great believer in that as well. And I think a lot of the time with sport, people from a distance looking at people either actually in the stands watching people playing or on the television, it's very easy actually to forget that these people are human beings.
Yeah, and that they've got a life, and that they have struggles at home. And I talked about it before. A couple of divorces, and I went through radio with one. I was sort of through commentary with another. It's not easy, and players go through the same thing. Men's players, women's players, they're all going through different things in life, and the same struggles that everyone at home goes through. It just sort of so happens that when they step on the park, they kind of have to put on a show, and you don't really know what's going on sort of outside of that. And I think social media has become a great thing, but also quite a worrying thing at times, with some of the abuse and some of the sort of the negativity in and around it. So just think twice before you post, and read it twice and think, do you need to send it? Is it necessary? Is it going to help someone, or is it going to make someone feel worse?
I don't know about you, and if I get I don't know 1,500 messages about a podcast or about something, and 1,499 of them are positive and welcoming, it's the one that comes at you that is negative that I remember.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you do, and in our industry, you get that all the time. I mean, anyone that's, as I said, I love a debate, and I'll have a debate with anyone, and I'm not right. I'm not always right. I'm happy to admit that, that I'll respect your opinion. We may not agree, and that's all cool. But anyone that sort of, any abuse, I normally just retweet and I say, thanks very much, mate. I hope you're better next time. Because I think the more you just get it out there and expose these people, I think the better off you feel about it as well, because it's just, you let it out there, and everybody, I mean, the amount of times that tweet is deleted within 5 minutes because they are sick of the abuse that they're getting for doing it.
Yeah.
And maybe that doesn't make me a better person. I don't know, but I think sometimes you just have to expose a little bit of that. But look, you're in the same sort of business as we are in, and not everyone's going to like what you do. And the bottom line is, it's just an opinion. It's my opinion. I get paid for it. And you don't have to agree with it. And it's okay if you don't agree with it. We can have a debate. You can be right. I can be wrong. It's okay. It doesn't have to end in blows.
I often say as well, if you don't like me that much, you don't really actually have to follow me on Twitter if you don't want to. You don't have to listen to what I have to say. So, go away and have a very nice life elsewhere if you wish to. And the same to you, Simon Doull. Go away and have a very nice life. Enjoy those that calendar that you just read out over the next few months. Enjoy the cricket. Enjoy the commentary. We'll be listening. Your voice. I mean, the one thing I've taken from our chat today. As I say, I've been trying to get you on this podcast for months, and you've been so busy. But it's been brilliant to talk to you. But the kind of love out there for you, the kind of respect for your commentary. There's a lot of people out there enjoy your work, and that's the biggest take I've taken from this.
Yeah, look, I appreciate it, James, and as I say, look, I absolutely love to death what I do, and I hope that comes across. And when I talk about the game, I love the game. I like to think I'm honest about it for the most part, and I always said to the players, I handed out the caps for the New Zealand boys on a couple of occasions. And the one thing I always say to them, I'll never say anything on television that I wouldn't say to your face. And I'll say the same thing to any player in the world. I'll happily debate anything I've said about you on television, because it's just my opinion. And again, it's not always nice, but it's honest. And that's kind of how I try and do it. So, mate, I appreciate the support. I appreciate the love, and appreciate you having me on, and appreciate your patience for sort of waiting these 2 or 3 months that I've sort of put you off every now and then as well. So,
mate, it was worth the wait. It was worth the wait. It's been very, very good to have you on today. So, as I say, wish you all the best for the future. Thank you, everybody out there, for all of your questions and for your views and your listens. We'll be back with another edition of the Cricket Podcast very soon indeed as well. Got plenty of guests. I think we've got about number 530 this one is today. I've lost track of where we are with this Cricket Paddock. So many episodes that have come. But Doyle, thank you very much. And I'm sure we'll speak again in the future. And thank you out there, everybody. Enjoy your days, and we'll see you again very soon indeed. Cheers, everybody.
Thanks, James.